one's coming to save you. So what are you gonna do about it? Raw Minds on men's mental health. Hosted by Erick. For the ones we never meet.
Tonight's guest is proof that where you start does not have to decide where you finish. Denny grew up in chaos. At only 4 years old, his father secretly took him across the state line. His childhood was marked by broken trust, poverty, abuse, sexual trauma, shame, and the teenage suicide attempt. For years, he carried the pain that most people never saw. But Denny kept building. He became a union ironworker. He spent time living in a monastery in France. He returned home, became a journeyman, and later built Precision Precast Erectors with his father. What started in 2008 grew into a company with hundreds of ironworkers and 5 appearances on the LNC 5000 list. He became a husband, a father to 6 sons, a business leader, and eventually stepped into one of the biggest fights of his life by running for the United States Senate in Idaho. He did not win the Republican primary, but tonight we are going to find out what that loss taught him about pride, purpose, and getting back up when the world says no. Denny also put his full story into a memoir, Blue Collar Based, A Humble Life in Idaho. The book speaks openly about childhood, sexual trauma, mental health, faith, fatherhood, leadership, and the long road from a broken child to a man trying to serve others. It was released by Skyhorse Publishing on November 2025. This is not a political debate. This is about a man beneath the campaign, the company, the awards, and the legendary beard. Tonight we are talking about abuse, suicide, shame, faith, fatherhood, failure, and what it costs to rebuild your life from the ground up. Before we begin, follow Raw Minds, share this episode, and leave a comment. Someone in your life may need to hear this conversation, even if they never tell you. I just want to say, Denny, welcome to Raw Minds. It's a pleasure having you on, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I'm glad you're doing this because it is important.
Yes,
right?
Thank you. Yeah.
We're somebody who struggled with mental health issues and not even being able to put a finger on, hey, these are mental health issues. Having somebody out there advocating and trying to share with people that it's okay to talk about it. That matters, and
Thank you.
It is making a difference, I'm sure, in the world.
Thank you, man. Yeah, you know what? It's been an amazing journey. I first started this because, my fiance passed away and I was in a dark place, and I didn't want others to feel how I was feeling. I really didn't. It was an ugly place. In 2015, I attempted to take my life, and I woke up 2 days later in the hospital. And I promised myself I'd never do that again because I have a daughter, a 12-year-old daughter now. And I wanted to help others, but in the return of this too, doing this podcast, it's really helped me, and like meeting hundreds of people around the world and hearing their stories and just sucking up all of their experience, has really actually shaped me too, so it's not just helping others, it's helping me too. And I just want to say to anybody out there, I really appreciate you guys listening, and just it's okay to be not okay. I mean, it's okay not to be okay, but it's just not okay to stay down, right? I do like to start off with getting you to tell everybody where they can find your book. So we can get that going first, and I'll put that on the screen so you can tell a little bit about your book.
Yeah, Blue Collar Blessed, A Humble Life in Idaho. It takes us up all the way to the launch of the campaign, and it's an Amazon bestseller, international bestseller on Amazon, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, with a lot of people being inspired and being surprised at how vulnerable I got, because not only do most men not get vulnerable and share what's underneath, but you don't see a whole lot of political candidates that are willing to get real and be real with the people that they're hoping to represent and stand up for. So it's a good read.
That shows a lot. That shows a lot too. It shows that you're a real person. You know what I mean? Like you're a real person. You have feelings. They could read the book and see who that they have representing them. You know what I mean? That actually shows a lot. So good for you, man. You can't see this, but I got goosebumps, man, because I'm proud of you. For even being vulnerable and being able to do that. I'm in the middle of writing a memoir right now. It's hard because I get so far and like, oh yeah, what about this, right? And I had to come back. You probably deal with that, right? But
yeah.
And being vulnerable too, and it's also affected me too. Like while writing it, it's brought up memories too, and stuff.
Yeah. it's hard. It's hard, especially, I've read some memoirs where, it covers a lot of the good times and a lot of the highlights,
Yeah.
and, and the reality is I don't think there's a lot to learn from that.
Yeah.
But when we see how does somebody deal with a hard time? How
Yeah.
does somebody survive hard, difficult challenges? How do they deal with, the trauma they've been through, the broken relationships, the promises that didn't materialize? Like, how do you come back from that, and how do you move from a place of that suffering into a place of thriving?
Hmm.
And I think that's where, whether it's in personal life or sports or business, like, sometimes there's a lot more to learn from where our pain is than there is from where it feels good.
I totally agree with you, and like it's all about too. Like I say this to everybody: is in everything that happens, there's a positive and a negative, right? You have your yin and yang, and there's a lesson in that. And like I just on the last show I just did an hour ago is the same thing. Is like you may be in it and you don't see, like what why this is happening to you, but there is a reason. There is a reason why, and that's for either to smarten you up or teach you a lesson, and you got to find that lesson, right? And like
Yeah.
for me, I found the silver lining, and it's this podcast, right? And helping other men. For you, it was your book in the Senate and all the other things, right? You know what I mean? And that's what you did. You took something that was painful and you turned it into power, since that's raw minds, pain and power. And that's why I have guests like you and many others on this show to show, just because you've gone through hell does not determine where you're going to end up. There is a life. Yeah, it's hard. You got to fight. You got to take care of yourself. But anything worth it in this world, is not easy. It's
Right.
not easy. Right? Being a parent. If you're a parent, being a parent is not easy, but the reward is beautiful because you have your little ones.
Yep, 100%.
Well, I do want to get into you a little bit more here. So I do have a question I want to start off for. Before the company, before the book, and before the Senate race, who was Denny as a scared little boy? Like, who were you? Where did it start off in your journey?
Yeah. I only have a few basic memories from before being taken away and before the divorce happened, which is, seems strange, right? I mean, a lot of people who have a lot of memories from when they were 3, when they were 4, when they were 5, I don't have a lot of those memories. Right. Like I've reconstructed a lot of what has happened. I've talked to family members about what's happened, but some of the memories that I have is, one of the earliest memories is like coming across, pornography at 3 years old. Right. Like that's not something a 3-year-old is ready
No,
for.
not at all, man. Not at all. You're not
And
even
then
developed yourself. You know what I mean? So,
and
yeah.
and then you come across, then you go through this period where, okay, you're gone from your mom for 6 months, and from what I've read, from what I've talked to people about, therapists and whatnot, like at that age when you lose a relative for a long period of time, like you psychologically process that as a death, right? Because that person's gone. And you don't have any sense of like, are they coming back? Are they not coming back? And I know, I have an older sister. I would talk to her. I'd ask her as this little 4-year-old, like, when's mom coming back? And of course, she's 7 or 8 at the time. And, that had
Yeah.
to be hard on her, right? Because she kind of had a little
Yeah.
more idea of what's going on than I did. But I mean, again,
Yeah.
she's 7,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like this is some crazy stuff. And, crazy stuff happened. We were apart for the 6 months. I know, there was, she told me about a point where like, she's watching me. My dad's out with his new fiance at the time. And it's like 2 in the morning and it's like, she's, nobody's home yet. We live in this terrible part of Hayward.
And she's
And
7, you said, right? And you're
she's
at home. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a 7-year-old watching a 4-year-old or 5-year-old,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she, she's like, okay, well, we're going to go up to Aunt Helen's house. Right. So, 2 o'clock in the morning, she's walking up, B Street in Hayward in 1981
Mm-hmm.
and, walking whatever the 10 blocks up to our aunt's house. Right. I mean, it's like, that's
No.
not a healthy environment for little kids, and then as time progressed, right, really what kind of malformed me, if you will, was like that early exposure to hypersexuality and pornography then turned into like there was more pornography around the house and there was pornography, available in the middle of the night. And there was this constant, like when I was stressed, when I was put out, a reliance on the sexual outlet. And again, keep in mind, like that's not a normal thing, a normal
Mm-hmm.
response for somebody who's, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Like they're not equipped to handle that.
Yeah.
And
And
all
just even adults too, though. Sorry to cut you, but even adults too. It's not, you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
it's a crutch. You know what I mean, right?
right,
And then
100%.
and thinking about a 4-year-old on top of that, you know what I mean? It's just yeah. Sorry to cut you off,
Well,
but I
then,
just wanted to say that for the viewers.
right. And well, then you start layering in some of the, like, we know a lot more about neurobiology and neurological pathways and how those lay in as the brain develops and how trauma impacts that neurological development. We
Hmm.
know a lot more now than we did 40 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like now we know that whatever response mechanism a person has when a trauma happens, whether it's a big T trauma, something really bad happens, right? Or whether it's this constant abandonment, this constant emotional neglect, like whatever response mechanisms neurologically wire in, they get wired in at the level of the brain that's developing at that point in time,
Hmm.
right? And so the younger you are when these things happen, the more likely those patterns are going to repeat as you mature because those are closer and closer to your autonomic nervous system when they happen.
Hmm.
And just like when we get scared and we start breathing fast, or we have these other biological responses, like, that's the level of reaction that these pathways can become when the trauma sets in early. When the trauma hits and the response mechanism is early, those response mechanisms kick in and in some cases are able to like bypass a lot of the prefrontal cortex development and prefrontal cortex functions just the same way that our breathing does.
Hmm.
And it's kind of sad and kind of scary, but in a certain sense, it's also a little bit freeing to go, okay, I can pause the self judgment and I can pause the self condemnation and I can short circuit the shame cycle by recognizing what's going on
Hmm.
or recognizing what's happened, right? Depending on the time frame and when things are going on.
Hmm.
And, for me, the experience led to a very long and descending cycle of like self condemnation
Hmm.
and despair, right? Of going, wow, like, this keeps happening. This is a cycle. It's a cycle. I'm doing everything I'm being told to do to fix this and it's not fixing it. Like, I must be the problem. I must be bad. I must be
Yeah.
really bad and evil if this is not getting better. And, that shame cycle is brutal,
I was
right?
just gonna say you get into shaming, right, yourself, and then it just gets even worse. I mean, I had, and not to cover yours or anything, but I had kind of something like that where I had a PTSD from eating meat. I got in trouble when I was 5 years old. I was at a camp, and I got first day. I think it was first or second day there. Got in trouble, and I was forced to eat cubes of meat. So while everybody else leaves at the mess hall, I'm still stuck there. And this teacher, counselor, whatever you want to call her, is stabbing chunks of meat and putting it in my mouth, stab it, hold it in front of my mouth until I swallow it, do it again, and would just keep on doing that. I'd get up, run to the bathroom, puke it up, sit back down, and that went on for about half an hour, 45 minutes. Yeah,
Wow.
it gave me PTSD from eating meat. Every time I wanted to eat meat, I wanted to. It smelled good, everything. But as soon as it went in my mouth, boom, I would instantly puke because it brought me back to when I was a child. So then I'd go like to Subway and my I would only get like pickles, on my Subway, you know what I mean? And like, oh, pickle sandwich, blah, blah, blah. And then that shame. So I carried that shame, and then I would be too embarrassed, to order, to go to restaurants and hold that shame, until I was 32 years old. And I said, like, the lady I was dating at the time, she actually helped me break that cycle. And thank God it was with a Wagyu steak, the first thing, right? So I'm telling you, that was, I at least once a year, I try to go get myself a nice Wagyu steak, and it cost me a lot of money. I think my last birthday, I spent like $900 on this 12-ounce steak. But I mean, I don't buy much for myself. You know what I mean? I'm a single dad.
Right.
I take,
Yeah.
so that's mine. You know what I mean? And it's healthy. Well, somewhat, putting it in my body. So
Yeah. I
but
get it.
it's holding that shame, and that shame even hurt more than anything. You know what I mean? I just wanted to relate with the shame so people can understand that shame. It's really hard, especially as a kid too, and you're not developed of how to deal with these emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's again, that's anybody who's suffered with any type of compulsive disorder, compulsive behavior, substance abuse, like those are all really similar neurological patterns. And, again, I think on a certain sense, right, it's easy to label it and call it bad and just shame,
Mhm.
right? Because at a certain level, maybe there is some efficacy at the beginning of that cycle or that pattern
Mhm.
of using a shame to kind of move somebody away from that behavior, right? But I think really it beyond maybe that initial burst, like it's not helpful, right?
No.
Because I don't care, I don't care what the abuse is, the substance abuse, whether it's whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's pornography or sex or whatever it is. Like I guarantee you, and I promise you 100% that person is not proud of what they're doing. And very, very rarely is it something that they're doing because, yeah, I really want to do this. Like, yeah, oh, yeah, I want to get blissed out of my mind because that's,
Yeah.
I love doing that.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
It's medicating usually, right? It's some kind of medicating to, some kind of trauma or something. Usually, to be honest, probably 90% of the time, maybe even more than that, it's a trauma that happened to them and they just want to forget it, and they just try to medicate and they could be in any way. I mean, there's medicating like being on the computer all day or whatever, like keeping your head busy, working too much. I mean, it just doesn't have to be, drugs, anything. It could be anything really at the end of the day that's unhealthy.
Yeah. And it's, again, I think it's, you try to, that in that state, you're trying to get to a place of like numb, right?
Mhm.
Where like, I don't feel any of the bad things. And you don't realize like you're not feeling any of the good things either.
No.
Like, because I worked through a lot of that as an adult and it took a lot of work. And it's, it's still an ongoing project, right? I'd be lying if I said that,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to say no,
Yeah.
I'm not. That's crap.
For life.
But I remember I remember the first time in my like adult living memory of really experiencing joy at just a scene in nature, And
Mhm.
I was actually, it was something I was able to share with my wife. We went outside in our backyard to watch a sunrise. And, I was working through some of these issues. And, as I see the sunlight filter through the trees and finally the sun peek over the trees and start, rays of sunshine scattering over our backyard and some of the grass waving in the wind. And I was just overjoyed and moved to tears. And my wife's like, what's wrong? And I'm just like, wow, I'm experiencing joy for the first time and I don't know how long. I don't remember when. And then I was immediately like felt shame because I'm like, man, this must be really hard for you to be married to somebody who like doesn't experience joy and is just so flat all the time. And I'm really sorry to have done that to you and to be that around you. And I'm, and
Can I stop you?
I,
That's very powerful though of you, too, to recognize that and to apologize and take accountability for that. If it's true or not, doesn't matter. You're recognizing and you're taking accountability. So I just want to say that that's very powerful of you to do that. It takes a lot of strength even to do that because like being as men, we're taught, suck it up, you're depressed, who cares? Get over it. You know what I mean? And I'm in 84, right? That's when I was born, right? And I was in that time, my dad would suck it up, be a man, get over it, don't cry, you're a man kind of thing. And that's what I was taught, right? But it's not, and you just expressed real vulnerability and real true strength right there.
yeah, it's, we have some very interesting ideas around, what masculinity really means. It's very funny. There's a verse around Christ that says, be like me, meek and humble of heart. And people think, I'm gonna be a little crass here, but people think that means that like, oh, Jesus is telling you to be a pussy.
Mm,
And that's not true because what meekness is strength voluntarily contained. Someone who's meek is actually a pretty badass mofo,
mm-hmm,
really, but they're deliberately deciding I'm not going to use my power for bad things.
mm-hmm.
I'm going to voluntarily restrain my power and use it in a proper manner. That's meekness.
Yeah, that's true strength.
That's real strength.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just this masculine strength and I'm going to overpower people and I'm going to bully people because I'm stronger than they are.
Yeah.
And like, that's not real manly strength. That's
Yeah.
not virtuous strength.
That's a
Right.
broken child usually. When someone's like that, they're broken. Like people say alpha male, blah, 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 you gotta be this and that and that. That's not a fucking alpha male, man. To me, that's not an alpha male. An alpha male takes care of himself and the people around him, doesn't put people down, brings them up. Even like you said, they have that power, but they don't abuse the power,
Right.
Like for me, it's like what's the difference between a leader and a boss? A leader will ask you to do something, a boss will tell you to do something. It's kind of like that.
When the other half of that is the humility part, right? Like we often think that humility means just, making fun of yourself and putting yourself down, of like making yourself small.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is it's more about acknowledging the truth. Yeah, we have things about us that are weak and that are bad. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's very true. But there is also things about us that are really good. There's also parts of us that are valuable and are honorable, and you have to take both of those,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like nobody wants to be around the guy who just thinks he's perfect all the time because they all know it's not true, and it's irritating as heck to be around that guy,
Ain't that the truth?
right? But nobody wants, like, nobody's totally crap either.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody's absolutely worthless and has nothing good or redeeming about them at all either. And so humility is really about finding, like, what's the truth about myself, you know? And I mean, from my perspective, it's very much a, like, what does God know about me that's true that I need to accept and know myself, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
he's not capable of lying. So if he knows it to be true, then it's true. And I have to live from that place, not from this I'm a worthless piece of shit place, and
Mm-hmm.
not from a I never make any mistakes and every word I utter and everything I do is perfect place, because that neither of those is true, right? And you know, if anything, like this whole journey of recovery and of getting past a lot of that trauma and learning to accept the truth about myself, because really that's really a big part of what it's come to, is to go, yeah, you know, yes, you're a strong person, and yes, you're not going to impose that strength on other people unjustly, and yes, there's a lot of really good things about you and you need to accept that, you know? And if anybody wants like a little self test of how they're doing on that, like think about the last time somebody gave you a compliment, right? And could you accept it,
Mm.
or did you deflect it?
See, to be like very vulnerable here, I used to have really hard times of accepting compliments. Even I, to be honest, I have a hard time even with like, I still do with this podcast. Like, oh, you're doing great. You're doing that. But I still don't think I'm doing enough. You know what I mean? Like it's always, to me, I'm always pushing that goalpost. Like as soon as I get there, I push it. And then I push it because let's face it, there's so much needs to be done in the men's mental health, right? I mean, mental health alone, but I mean, this is men's mental health. I'm a man, right? So this is my podcast. But and I'm always just like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. I gotta get, and that's something I deal with daily. I'm not perfect. I do this podcast. I'll tell you, I'm far from perfect. I am fucked up beyond, but I show up. And I still put in the work, and that's the thing about this is like why I like to do this is what you see is what you get with me. Yeah, I have my days. You know what I mean? I'm not fucking Superman here. I cry. I have my crushes. I cry. I do these things, but it's showing up, right?
Yeah, that's a big part of it, right? Is showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. But the other part is just trying to, I'm happy about the podcast, but I'm not, if that makes sense. Like I want it to be more. I want to help more. I want, you know what I mean? I want to reach more. I want to just, I don't know, but maybe it's because of the pain that I've been through and I know what it's like to be alone in that pain. I'm not too sure. I'm still trying to figure that out.
It's funny. I was talking with somebody the other day, and we were having the conversation about like how to balance the need to do more and to improve more versus the need to know that you're enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you've done is good, right? And it was, and I said, look, you can love someone and it's enough, and you can love them more at the same time. Like,
Ooh, I like that.
there isn't an upper end limit.
Yeah.
You may be doing everything you can do at the moment, but you may be able to do more. You don't know, but you can try.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean that what you're doing now isn't enough.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a very different way to look at, a lot of these frames is like, okay, like what I'm doing now is good, and I can do more.
Yeah.
And that's also good.
Thank
You
you.
know?
A light bulb just went in my head. Thank you, man.
So
I honestly mean that. Like I've been kind of struggling with that, and it gives me a different perspective on this. Definitely.
yeah, it's just, and it's also okay. Like it's because I will tell you, sometimes you could be doing so much that you can just exhaust yourself. And then you need to take a break, and you're sitting there beating yourself up going, man, I'm not doing anything. I'm taking a break.
Mm-hmm.
I can't take a break. Like I got to keep improving. I got to keep moving forward. I got to keep doing something. And the reality is that at a certain point, like when you get to that point of exhaustion, you do need a break.
Yeah.
Right. Because then the effort that you're putting in, you're not getting any return on that investment that you're putting in, because like the substrate, the base of what you're working on has to stabilize before you put anything more into it. Right. And I think it's okay to recognize that too. Right.
Yeah.
That, okay, I'm at a spot where, okay, I have to pause the improvement in this particular area because I need to let that consolidate. I need to let it settle down, and then I can work more on it. Or I've gotten to the point where, I've gotten 90% of the improvement I could expect to get in that area. And I have these other areas I need to work on and focus on. So now I'm going to say, this is sufficient for the moment, and I'm going to turn over here. Right.
Yeah.
And that's another frame that I think is really important for a man to have.
Yeah, stopping smelling the roses, pretty much, as I call it, you know? Like, I actually just did that. I took a 4 weeks off because I needed that, you know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
need to be able to, give that to yourself, you know? And be okay with it.
Yeah.
I was itching to get back, trust me, you know, because I love what I do, but at the same time, you gotta be okay with it too.
There's some really interesting research around that. Early 2000s, I came across a guy named John Dudek, and he was a researcher at Stanford. But at the same time as he was a researcher, he was also like the second highest performing real estate agent in California, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So he was not
Yeah.
just somebody who taught theory at Stanford. He was
Yeah.
actually somebody who got stuff done.
Mhm.
But then wanted to know, like, why is it I'm succeeding, and what can I do to teach other people to succeed? And
Mhm.
one of the things they uncover is that, like, there's a link between rest and high performance, and there's a link between the level of responsibility that you have and the amount of time off that you need and the amount of high performance that you can have. Right. And basically it was like, for every day off that you're disconnected from your high stress, high responsibility obligation, I want to say you get like 3 or 4 days of peak performance when you come back. Right.
Mm. Mhm.
But the catch is this, is that if you're like a C-suite or C-level, or top of an organization entrepreneur type thing, it typically takes 7 days to actually disconnect from your obligations,
Okay.
right? To like
Yeah.
mentally allow yourself the space to not be connected and be impacted by those concerns.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's only then that you actually start to recharge and get back to where you're building up a battery for that peak performance.
Okay.
And if you think about like how most of us vacation in the modern world, it's like, we're taking a long weekend. We're going to take a week off.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why we're like exhausted when we get back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's so true.
Part of it is it's like we just barely got through the phase of actually disconnecting from the responsibility and the burden. And we didn't actually get any of the recharge phase that the research shows that we need.
Maybe just touched it and that's it, and then turn it back on kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
And again, think about how hard it is to fully disconnect today,
Yeah.
right? And I mean fully disconnect. I mean, how many people take a week off, let alone 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and like put their phone aside?
I was just
And
gonna say, and it's hard with this, you know what I mean?
yeah, it's
And
I
especially
got a
the
lot of respect.
kids now that are growing up, everybody, like my dad used to call it the heads down club because everybody's got their heads down walking, you know what I mean? So I mean, like, I remember when my daughter was a lot younger, and it would be a fight. Like, you only allowed this much time, on the iPad, take it away, and the house would flip. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like it's the program. It's just hard to disconnect from everything now, and it's like addiction, right? It's a different type of an addiction. You get
Mhm.
into that dopamine, right?
Yeah.
It's really this world's messed right now, man. It's messed. Bring
Yeah.
back the pagers.
Oh, yeah. I do. I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I think I'm actually encouraged to see a movement among a lot of parents stateside. I mean, it's probably not a significant majority or even a significant minority, but I'm seeing some parents start to push back on giving their kids cell phones,
Mhm.
smartphones. They're starting to push back on giving them tablets. A lot of schools are starting to go no phones
Yeah.
during the day. I think, I've heard it described as like the world's, what is it, the world's largest unmonitored experiment, right? What happens when we put these devices in the hands of, 300 million
Mhm.
kids?
Yep. I mean, what was that? The Pokemon Go, that game that they had, they mapped out the whole world just from that game. You know what I mean? So, yeah, you never know. It could be some experiment. Experiment. You never know, man.
But yeah, so anyhow, for me, it's been, it's been a heck of a ride.
Yeah. Well, I would
To
like to know, like, your book, like, how did that all, like, come, like, how did that all, like, how did you, like, you know what, I need to write a book, like, after you, like, it took care of it, like, were you still battling too with your book, like, with yourself? Like, I mean, we're always, like we said, you're going to be working on yourself all your life, right? Everybody is. And no one, if you're perfect, you're fucking lying, straight up, you're perfect, then you're fucking lying, everybody's working. But like, did you find that the book also helped you as you wrote it too? Like it healed you in some sense?
Well, so funny story about the book. Maybe like 9 or 10 years ago, I kind of came to a point where like, okay, I need some professional help. I'm not making the progress I want to make following the, just the spiritual guidance I'm getting in church. Maybe there's something different. Maybe there's something like on a natural level that I'm overlooking. I'm going to start investigating. So I went to I went to a therapist for the first time. Right. And there was there still is a lot of stigma around that.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
But I'm like, okay, look, I got to do this. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. I don't have to tell them right away. Like, I don't. And I remember like our second session in, he's like, you should probably bring a notebook and start taking notes because someday you're going to want to write a book. And I'm like, you're nuts. You're out of your, like, no way am I sharing this with anybody, And then I think our next session, he was like, okay, well, I brought you a workbook and we're going to start talking about your childhood. And I was just like, F you. I built a wall around that for a reason. And we are
Yeah.
not going back. Like,
Yeah.
there's a reason that there's a wall there, and that's it. So if that's all you got for me, I guess we're done.
Hmm.
And so, fast forward 9 years, and all of a sudden, I'm writing a book about these experiences. And was the book helpful from a therapy standpoint, from a healing standpoint? The actual writing process was like being re-immersed in the soup.
Hmm.
And the writing process that I used was to team write with somebody, and then my editing team, and we set a very compressed timeline. Like normally a project like that might take 6 or 8 months, and some people take a year or 2 years to write their memoir out.
Hmm.
We gave ourselves 5 weeks.
Oh wow.
And so, it was like with my writing partner, it was, 4 or 5 hours a day of conversation of me narrating story and narrating events and answering questions and getting into the deep end of the pool,
Hmm.
and then he would transcribe into the prose, and then I would reread the next day, and then we'd go into the next interview session, and then we'd be submitting, sections to the editing team who'd be asking questions and clarifications. And so it turned out to be like, 8 or 9 hours a day of this deep, intense work that was very activating, very triggering. And to come out the other end and go, okay, I made it through that again. I don't know if I'd do it that way again. But to have, some people go, wow, like I before it's even published, to go, wow, I really admire you for going through that. That had to, that meant a lot. And then as it started getting into, the pre-reading and into the final edits, and people are going, wow, this is really good. I can't believe you got this raw and this vulnerable. Like
Yeah.
you should be really proud of this. And that part has been, I think, very healthy for me. Right. Because I think it's easy to
Yeah.
look at our own life and go, like, whatever, I just did what I had to do.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
that's your life. You lived that. So it was just like whatever. But someone looking in on you, be like, wow. Like that's the same with like, so I'm writing a memoir as we speak too. And that's why I asked this question, because the other day it brought up so much stuff, right? And
Yeah.
but in a healthy way, you know what I mean? In a very healthy way, and it was good. It's almost like yeah. But I do want to touch on something, because you said something and I was like, wow, that kind of happened to me. So I had a therapist, and I told him my story, and he says, "Holy shit, kid! Out of 10, you're a 9.5, and if I can't fix you, we'll write a book." Well, here I am. I'm not fixed, and I'm writing a book. Yeah, great. And it blew my mind. Like kind of the same thing what happened there, right? So, but it's pretty funny. But it's a journey, and I'm very excited to actually. I haven't being able to grab your book. I've been dealing with a lot of things. I got actually 2 other books I'm trying to go through. If you can imagine, I get lots of guests. But
Yeah.
yeah. So, but I would love to go. I love like people's journeys. This is why I do this, and really kind of dissect into your life, and not like picking it apart, but dissect, to put myself into that, and feel what you've gone through, and see the pain to the power, right? And how, like a flower can like, break through the concrete. You know what I mean? And that's what this is, and that's what these are, man. So it's just beautiful.
That's what people find interesting, is the kind of the striving for better, right?
Mhm.
Because my path took me to some pretty interesting places, right? I mean, I did well in school, in high school, had a scholarship, but college ended up not being the right thing for me for a lot of reasons, right? It's a very radical transition from high school anyways. And my high school was pretty chaotic and pretty
Mhm.
crazy on top of that, right? But it was very much like my high school existence was from 6 a.m. till midnight. Like you're booked out every day.
Crazy. Yeah.
Right? You're getting up, you're going to school, you're doing school all day, you're doing some sort of after school activity, then you're going to work, because if you wanted to do any of these things, like you had to pay your own way.
Yeah,
And
money. Yeah.
I mean, things weren't cheap. I mean, it was, especially back, this would have been early 90s. So you're making, $7 an hour.
I remember my first real job as I was labor trying to get into a carpenter. I remember I was making 1650, man. 1650 was and then I had a place, I was 19, 20, and I had a place downtown on the 23rd floor, and that was 1650, 1,650, kind of funny. And it was 980 square foot little apartment, and I was like, whoa, this is so expensive. Now I'm 42 years old, I'm living in Vancouver. That's unheard of, it's unheard of. It's crazy, right? So a good time. I don't know, sorry, I'm kind of romancing, I'm going the wrong way, but anyways, yeah.
But, so I bounced a bit, and part of what, growing up, I was inspired by my faith and wanted to, potentially pursue, maybe the priesthood or maybe something like that. And there was this, but then there's all this shame around, okay, well, you've got this issue around sexuality, in these compulsive behaviors, and okay, but I feel like I should do this, but you don't fit the mold, but I should do this. And that caused a lot of back and forth. And, I went to college, I left college to go pursue that religious life, ended up back in working construction, to help my family because they needed some help financially. Don't need to get into details, but
No.
again, the drugs and alcohol definitely fueled that
Mhm.
on their side of the need. And so I came back and helped them realize okay, if there's not an outside force providing that discipline and structure, I'm kind of at a loss personally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where I was at then. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll join the Marine Corps. Maybe that'll kind of give me that internal framework to have some discipline. Right. Those guys are pretty
And a
disciplined fellas,
purpose too, right? A kind of a
right?
purpose, because that's what we
Yeah.
need.
Part of a community, right?
Yeah.
Because there was a big sense of being adrift and not
Yeah.
part of a community, right? But when I was in boot camp, I had a massive heat stroke and spent 3 days in the ICU, and it was a whole near death experience of you see the light, and maybe you'll get a kick out of this. I'm on this 2 mile run. I'm completely delirious. I get to the end of the run, and they're like, they see how delirious I am. I'm looking on the ground for my glasses, and the commander's like, what are you doing, son? I'm looking for my glasses, sir. They're on your face, son. And then get this
Crazy.
man to the infirmary, right? So they get me to the ER, and my my drill sergeant's over me going, "You don't have permission to die, son."
Major Pain, straight out of whatever, Major Pain there. Wow.
Just can't make this stuff up, And
Mm-hmm.
I decided, okay, well, if that didn't work, this is clearly God is telling me to go a different direction. Maybe I'll go the other direction I thought He was wanting me to go. So I'll go pursue the religious life, and that's, that led me into a monastery over in France for almost 2 years. And, again, I think it was a life that I loved and wanted to pursue, but it wasn't, they didn't think that it was the right life for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when it was time to make a choice, I was like, okay, I'm ready to move forward and take vows and pursue this. And they're like, hey, we think you should go home and have a family. Wow. Okay.
Thanks for your
Okay.
time.
I mean, and to their credit, right? I think that's part of the challenge we live in today, right? Is that we have generation after generation after generation of trauma passed on at the moment in our
Ain't that the
society.
truth? Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I don't care where you want to draw a line, right? I mean, but I think a good one to look at it is the timelines around World War I and the Depression, which then followed on to World War II, where you have, just a huge population of men coming back traumatized and trying to raise families in that very shut down. I don't want to deal with my emotions, can't deal with my emotions, and so you shouldn't either.
Or men's
Right.
not coming back, and their sons are at home, and they have to deal with that too, right?
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
Right. And so then, and then you have the Vietnam era with all the craziness of that going on. And then, you layer in the sexual revolution and the drug revolution on top of that. Right. So you have these multiple layers of generational trauma, and societal mess being passed on to that next generation, passed on and compounded, where we get to where we're at today, where it's not hard to see how many people are having a hard time today. Right. There's real reasons why the suicide rate is up, and there's real reasons why the mental health issues are through the roof. And it's this generational compounding of not actually dealing with the root of things and not actually doing the hard work to not pass it on to the best of your ability. And so when I look at what happened, with me over the monastery, I think of it, I go, look, to a large part, some of these organizations at a natural level don't have the tools to necessarily help people overcome the things they're faced with, right? And frankly, in a very real way, like it's actually better, for them to go home, even though maybe that's not where they really should be, right? But it's better because if they don't get the right help and if they don't work through the issues, the amount of harm they can cause in those different positions of responsibility can be tremendous. I mean, because we've seen
Yeah.
that too,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Seen that in the
And they,
last.
like you said, they're not equipped with it, right? So, like, they may not be equipped. So, they don't want to have that liability, or say you go off and heavens God, no, but say you go off and do something, even maybe take your life or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then, and I'm not saying that they don't want that responsibility, but they don't have they don't have the responsibility to be able to walk you through that. They're not equipped to deal with that. You know what I mean? So it makes
right,
sense. Yeah.
right. So I do, at a certain level, I kind of get, what decision was made or what I think I would have to, because they never disclosed, what their reasoning was, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in a certain sense, it's like, okay, that I get it. Like, I come from a broken family. I come from a really troubled background. I come with my own baggage. I come with my own issues. And after reflection on their part, they're going, this is not a good fit.
Hmm.
And I get it, I do. But then I think as entered into starting a family, it took a while for me to go, okay, like I have to make sure I'm not passing this on to my
Hmm.
kids. I have to, like, the buck
Break the
has to
chain.
stop here.
Yeah.
Right. And where that's led to is, for example, around the book, like I actually had to tell my story to my kids around the kitchen table for the months leading up to its release out in the open market,
Hmm.
because I felt, okay, my sons deserve to hear this from me and not read it in a book.
Not in the book. Exactly. Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
deserve the right to ask me questions and to find out themselves rather than hear it from their friends or read it from the book.
Not to get
And
too personal, but like, how was that for you to be able to like give them that? And like, how was that? Was this like, obviously, like to me, I would think is a little bit scary at times,
yeah,
definitely, because
yeah,
this is, your kids, right? So
yeah.
definitely.
I think yeah, it was a little bit intimidating, a little scary.
Hmm.
And as we went through the process, I think it became really affirming because it helped them know who I really was.
Yeah.
Right? Because they now knew that, I'm not just Sergeant Dad or some hard
Yeah.
ass, like,
And they can be proud too. You know what I mean? They can be proud. That's what my dad did. That's what he went through, and he still gave us a beautiful life. And he broke
yeah,
the chain. When they're old enough, they will see that you broke the chain, right?
right. So that's been really powerful, right?
Hell yeah.
To go, these young men see where I started and where I went and where I'm at now, and they see where they've started and how they're at a better trajectory and a better arc,
Yeah.
and they can appreciate that for what it is.
Yeah.
And we talked earlier about, like, how much you love somebody
Hmm.
and you can love them more.
Yeah.
You know, I think this on both directions is an instance of that, right? Of
100%, man.
yeah, they
Yeah.
love their dad,
Yeah.
and now they have a deeper
Yeah.
appreciation, for what's been done on their behalf.
Not just
And
that though, you also left a digital footprint for them. You know what I mean? So they will always be able to look back and be proud of you. And I'm gonna say this, we're all gonna die. We all die at one part. So in one point in your life, you won't be here, but they will still be able to look back on that book and be proud and be like, that's my dad. And I'm
yeah,
proud to have him,
yeah,
definitely. And that alone, like that just gave me goosebumps. That alone is just a miracle in itself.
yeah. It's it's been a good process, and it's God bless my wife. I think it's been challenging for her, right?
Mhm.
We talked about the joy incident earlier, right? And I know it hasn't been easy being
Mhm.
married to me, and I think that this puts her in a spot of, oh wow, like
Mhm.
we come from a culture of you don't talk about your past.
Mhm. Mhm.
When we went into marriage, it was very explicit. Yeah, you don't talk about your past.
Mm.
Like that's in the past. You're creating a future, so work on your future together.
Yeah.
Which I understand, like the intention, and I understand where it's going.
But you gotta get
But
your
I think
past because it's gonna catch up to your future if you don't, right?
it's driving your future, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're
Yeah.
actively healing and changing. And I think that's I hope someday she'll appreciate that. And
I think she already does, brother. I think she already does. She may not tell you, but I think she already does. Just
You
from
prob-
like what you're telling me, man. You know what I mean? Like it's just she does definitely. Well, she's still with you. I mean, you know what I mean? So that's gonna show for something, right?
yeah, that's true. That's true.
So in the book there, what would you like if you could take away one thing out of that book and give it to someone, some piece of advice? What would you like? What would it be? Like if someone was reading the book and you say, "No, you got to read this part right here."
You know, I would say I would say probably the part right after I face suicide, right? And it was a little later. I think the PR people got active about, saying it was a teenager. It was actually, I was married and I was kind of progressing in the journey of trying to recover from a lot of these issues. And I had a perfect storm of things come along, and I faced this suicidal episode. And it happened to be when my mom was visiting in town, and and I recall talking to her about it like a year or two after it happened. Because I didn't, it didn't come to a point where she had to know what was going on at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that hurt the most about it was, she said, I knew you were in a really dark place, and I knew something really bad was happening, and I should have talked to you, but I didn't know what to say. And I share that because I think we all come across people that are in a hard spot at some point, and we know they're hurting, we know they're down, we know they're in a dark place, and we don't know what to say. And so we don't say anything. And sometimes just that saying, just being present,
Mm-hmm.
not about the words that you're saying, but it's the fact that you're being present
Mm-hmm.
can change the direction.
Well, it's just having that body, that someone beside you, that's what changed the direction for me. Joey, we started this podcast together. That's how it started. I turned to him and said, I want to start a podcast. And he would come to my house after she died. He would come to my house every day after work and he would just sit there, wouldn't say a word. He would just sit there. Sometimes he would just come over. We wouldn't even say one word, and then he'd be like, "Okay, I'll see you later," and go. Like an hour or so later, he'd always stay for at least an hour, and that's all I needed. I needed someone just to hold space, no matter what he says. There's nothing he's gonna fix that. Nothing. I just needed someone to hold space. That's it. And it's so true what you said. Like I just want to say because it happened to me. It's so true. It really is. That's what I needed is someone just to hold space, not to tell me how to feel or it's gonna be okay. Because in that moment, I don't want to hear that it's gonna be okay. I just
Yeah.
want to just feel everything and go through it,
Yeah. No, and it's funny. Proof to this is cyclical, right? And that
Yeah.
we're working on stuff, but we still like it's never a I'm there and now I'm perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And, just literally just a week ago, some of the different stresses going on in life, and I'm working through this just totally banal safety program that I have to do for a certification. And like I'm completely spiraling down into a hole mentally, right? I mean, I'm thinking all sorts of, destructive thoughts, trying to stave off some suicidal ideation. I'm like, I'm in a bad spot, right? Like and I don't even know if my guy knew what spot I was in, but one of my friends, one of my coworkers was like, "Hey man, I got around a golf book this afternoon. You want to go hang out and play some golf?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Yes, please. Yeah.
thank you."
Yeah.
And we played 17 holes before I said, "This is what was on my mind, and I really appreciate you just making space for me to come along."
The whole time, I bet you were probably processing how to say it, and doing the whole time. I bet you the whole time. Yeah, I know that. I know that. I don't want to take away, but like I'll be honest. I tell everybody I'm fucked up too, but I still do my thing. And just the other day, I think it was Friday, I had a really hard time. I mean, I got a 12-year-old. It's really hard. She's not listening right now. She's rebelling, and it's also affecting my relationship with my girl a little because she's yelling also to my girl too. You know what I mean? So it's like it's hard. It's a hard situation. You know what I mean? You're trying to get everybody, and I was just losing it. There was no like everything's happening. Plus, on top of it, my mom has cancer, lung cancer. She's 82. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of things going on, right? And it was like, man, like I'm starting getting thoughts. I'm getting very depressed. I noticed I started sleeping more. And I got out of the house and I had to walk. And then I'm like walking, and I just had to sit down and just kind of breathe and get myself out of that because I knew, you know what I mean? And it's good that it's very healthy that you start recognizing these things. And for me, I like to take myself out of the situation, go for a walk or get out of the house, create space, and that's what I did. And I think I just want to pass it on to anybody else there,
Yeah.
even if you're fighting with your spouse, you know, like be like, hey, like give it a second. I gotta take a minute. You know, cool heads prevail. You know, it really does. You know,
And it's funny because I mentioned we know a lot more about, like the neurobiology and whatnot today than we did
Mhm.
before. But when it comes to dealing with some of these life issues and some of this, the sorrows and pains of just being human,
Yeah.
right? Like our forefathers dealt with this. I'm reminded of there's a passage by St. Thomas Aquinas where he talks about dealing with extreme sorrow, right? Which they would,
Mhm.
was what we would think of as depression today,
Mhm.
a state of continual sorrow. And he's like, well, here's the 5 ways to deal with it. Right. And he's like, and he's very interesting because he's so logical, right? Like you would question, does this man even have emotion? Like everything he writes is just so logical.
Yeah.
But he's like, okay, here's the first, like, you're going to pray, you're going to talk to a friend, you're going to sleep, you're going to take hot baths, and you're going to cry.
And then you're fixed.
And
Is that it?
no, but it was just like, these are the
Okay.
things that you can do. Right. And it's funny,
Yeah.
what you think about it, right? Because like when we're down, like the last thing we want to do is pray and spend time with with God, with the universe, with like something much, much bigger than us. Right. And we don't want to talk to anybody.
No. Or
We don't want to
shower.
tell anybody,
You know.
definitely. Yeah. Okay.
No.
Sleep is natural. Right.
Yeah.
But too much of that's not healthy.
Yeah.
Right. But like actually in giving yourself some self-care, right? In his mind, like a hot bath would have been going to like a hot springs or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's a significant investment in self-care in the 1200s.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I thought you meant what was I gonna say? God, I just lost train of thought for a second there. Yeah, never mind. Sorry. Well, it'll come back to me. It always happens, and then like near the end, I'll be like, "Hey,
That self-care is important, right? I mean, and it's
Yeah.
okay. He's saying, look, hey, we get down and you need to take care of yourself, right? And
Yeah.
then have a good cry, like let it out.
Yeah.
Like,
Which is true because that's a release. You know what I mean? That is a release.
and that's in some ways I'm kind of jealous of women that can do that, right? And there's not very many men that are able to just like let it out
Yeah.
and release it. And yet here's this, I think that's why the juxtaposition is so important, right? Is like, here's this monk who comes across as like incredibly logical and not emotional at all. And he's going, well, sometimes when you're down, you just have to have a good cry,
Yeah.
right? Like,
It's
it's
true.
like, okay, I'll get there. I don't know when, but I'm going to get there.
Yeah. I mean, and when you're ready, though, it'll come out too. You know what I mean? It really is like when you're ready, it really come out. And sometimes you won't even like. God, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and I was in the shower and I just started crying because I missed my dad. I don't talk to my dad. We don't have a good relationship. I haven't seen him in years, but I just miss having that a father figure. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I do.
And I watched a video. I forgot what movie it was. I watched the movie, and then that night I went and had a shower, and it really tore me because I saw this dad and his son. You know what I mean? And I never had that, and it just I'm missing something I never had. You know what I mean? Almost like I miss it because I know what it feels like, but I don't in a sense. And I just broke down. But then I felt good after, and I felt good. I was like, okay, I needed that. I don't know how long I needed that was holding in, but it came out. I think in 2018, 2019 is when the last time I saw my dad. So, I mean, he's in and out of my life, right? But I never had, and and it helped me, man. I felt great after.
That's powerful. I appreciate you sharing that with me because
Thanks, man. Yeah. I'm not scared of anything, man. I'll tell you, like, you know what I mean? I don't care. I mean, this is streaming in 115 countries, man, and so actually, I want to do a shout out because I always see this and it blows my mind, man. Like not to deter any of the other countries, but Vietnam's the third country that listens to my podcast. So I just want to give a shout out to all my Vietnamese friends out there. I just want to say thank you. And all the other Latvia too is huge. So this is my little shout out to you guys. I appreciate all of you guys. I really do, and I thank you for everything.
That's really powerful to hear that's how much reach you have because when you bring up those two regions and I think, okay, the same issues that we're talking about here from my view, from an American perspective of going, we have like this generational trauma that has to be addressed or it gets passed on and compounded, right? Like I have to think that's real in Vietnam. That's real in Latvia and in Eastern Europe, right? Those are very real things. And, somebody who could be struggling with, like you said, whether it's compulsion, unwanted behaviors, whether it's, whatever they're dealing with, like to acknowledge that there's a generational component there and that there's some things that have been passed on to them that are not healthy that they can work on, they can work through, and that they can be the inflection point where things get better.
True. It's true.
know?
And that's why we need to do things like this. You know what I mean? We need to do these things like this. Your book, my podcast, other people's books, other people's courses, whatever it may be. People making like videos, like little reels that help people, whatever it may be. These things help, And it's kind of it's magical that, like, if you really look at it, everybody's struggling in this world. Everybody. There's no one that's perfect, like I said before, but it's all over the world. It's all over the world. And just because borders, or whatever, what do you want to say it, or ethnic, religion, anything, doesn't matter. We still deal with the same issues, and that's mental health at the end of the day. So I know it's we kind of went a little past here. I don't know if you're okay, or if there's anything else you want to add before anything important. Yeah.
No, I think we're good. I mean, I think it's important to recognize that, and hopefully I've shared it well, that like it's a process, right? And you can get to a point where, okay, I can stop for now here and I can keep working, and I can keep working now, or I can keep working later, but it's a process. And I visited my aunt over the weekend, spent some time with her, and she's like, you just are in such a better place than you were 5 years ago. And you look so much more at peace with everything. It's good to get that affirmation from people, but it also says, hey, this is a process, right? She's seen me many times between, the last 5 years. And for her to go, you noticeably look better than 5 years ago. Like I see what you're doing, right? And
what a powerful compliment, though, man. That's a very yeah. But that's a powerful compliment. You know what I mean? It really is, because this is someone that's seen you grow over time. You know what I mean? And that knows you personally and stuff that you've gone through, I'm guessing, or at least a little bit of it, you know? And then where you are to, like, that is one powerful compliment. Really. It really is, good for you, man.
So it's, I think that's a really important thing to realize and accept, that it's a process, right? And it's, it may never be done.
No,
and that's
it's
okay.
never. Yeah,
that's okay.
Yep. And it's fun, though, at the same time. Like, you may not think of it, but it's fun because you're building yourself. You're finding yourself. You're becoming this person that you've always wanted to be, I guess you could say. You know what I mean? So, like, it's okay to have fun in it. It's scary. It gets ugly. Like I'm saying, like, you want to talk about ugly, you go down deep into your childhood. That is going to be some of the hardest shit you'll ever have to do to relive that shit and to get through it. But it's worth it. Nothing in this life that is easy is worth it, except for maybe the lotto. You know what I mean? But even then, I know you Americans, you guys get fucked on the tax. Over here in Canada, they give us the whole thing. So, but other than that, you know what I mean? Like, everything else is just it's hard, right? But it's beautiful at the end of the tunnel. And that's why there's people like us that have walked these paths. We can carry the light in that dark tunnel to show these people where it is. So I applaud you for what you've not what you've been through, but what you've done with what's happened to you and what you're putting forward and helping. And hopefully next time we'll get you up on there on the Senate, my friend.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, Danny, I just want to say again, thank you for coming out, being on Raw Minds. I really appreciate it. Thank you for, being vulnerable and sharing your story. And I just want to say one last time, all your info will be in the bio. So if you guys want to reach out, check out the book. It'll be in the bio. And also you can find it. I just want to say this real quick. You can find it up on Amazon, so you can hit the link there, or just type in Amazon and get the book. Like, what the hell are you guys doing, man? Just figure shit out, get that book and start reading. So,
it's an international bestseller for a reason.
Exactly. 100%. Well, guys, I just want to say thank you. This is the second podcast I did today, and we will see you next week with another great one. Take it easy. Bye.
Raw Minds. Men's Mental Health. Hosted by Erick. Follow, subscribe, like, share. For the ones we never meet, you're not alone.